today we're going to be talking about trust. So when I was reading this passage in Luke, I was like, okay, I can take this in 18 different directions and spend like an hour in each of those different directions, but it all kind of just came down to trust, and that was really cool to me. So that's what I'm going to be focusing on today. So I'm guessing you know what the word trust means. I was going to like look up a Google definition or something like that. I was like, no, you guys know what trust means. But there's different types of trust, right? It's like there's the harmless type of trust, like where you do a trust fall. Because like the worst that's gonna happen is like you get a bruise on your behind, and you're gonna live. You're not gonna die. And then even then, we don't even fully commit. Have you guys done the trust falls where you're like, because you don't trust the person, and they're like, hey, trust fall. So you're like, yeah. So there's that kind of trust, but then there's trust like with friendships, where like you trust someone with a secret, or you trust someone to have a mutual respect for you that you have for them. And that's where it gets problematic if that trust is broken. Trust fall, broken trust, you're fine, you're gonna live. But if you have a true friendship with like family member even, friends, close friends, siblings, coworkers sometimes, that's where trust is more important, because that actually has an impact if it's broken. I was talking about in middle school, I was like, that's like the most dramatic time period in history is middle school. It's like, because trust is broken in every single area, because they're learning what trust means. Like I remember even in elementary school, you're learning what trust really means, and it gets broken, and that's where like I think trust issues start to form, or you start to put more trust in yourself than other people. That's a big issue for me, is that I put too much trust in myself, and I trust myself to figure things out, and that becomes problematic. Like if someone tells me what to do, I do not take that very well. It's like I trust myself with my time, and if you tell me how to work with my time, I'm like, this isn't your time. I know the best way. I have this whole plan formulated in my head. It's gonna be great. If you try to intervene, it's like a huge trust the process thing that doesn't always work out, because I put too much of that trust in myself. So I don't like getting told what to do. But in this story that I'm gonna read, it's like the Fishers of Men story, which you guys probably have heard or sung the song like when you're younger. I'm not gonna sing it because I'm gonna spare you getting it stuck in your head for the rest of the day and of my voice. But when you have heard the story before, but if you look at it from a standpoint of trust, it's so cool, because this is honestly a really good example of what it looks like to trust Jesus. Because if I just told you guys, I could just come up here and say, some of you guys really need to trust God more. Read Luke 1 through 11 and then leave the stage. But we're gonna look at what that actually means. So, yeah, not Luke 1 through 11. Luke 5 is where we're gonna start, verses 1 through 11. We're not going to over 11 chapters, though I'm sure that would be super beneficial. We're starting in chapter 5, so if you guys wanna go there, Luke chapter 5, in the very beginning, on your phone, Bible, it'll also be on the screen here. Okay. And bear with me, because I'm like nervous, and when I read in public, that's when I start to stutter. I promise I know how to pronounce words and read. Okay, so verse 1. See, we're off to a great start. Okay, verse 1. As the crowd was pressing in on Jesus to hear God's word, he was standing by Lake Gennesaret. He saw 2 boats at the edge of the lake. The fishermen had left them and were washing their nets. He got into one of the boats, which belonged to Simon, and asked him to put it out a little from the land. Then he sat down and was teaching the crowds from the boat. Okay, so I'm gonna stop right there. We have more verses to go over, but I'm gonna give you guys some context here. You don't need to do it now, but if you read the end of the chapter before this, chapter 4, there's a story of how Jesus has healed Simon's mother-in-law. So Simon Peter is the Simon that we're meeting in this story. He's already met Jesus before. So that was people started then talking about it because of how amazing it was. So that's how this huge crowd has come to listen to what he has to say, listen to his teachings. Because he started healing people, including Simon's mother-in-law. So Simon was getting this idea of how different and special and amazing Jesus was. He was like, okay, this is not a prophet. This is not a guy who's super wise. This is not some weirdo who can do things that look like magic tricks. This could be Jesus. This could be like the Messiah. This guy's different. So he knew something was up. And then especially, once Jesus got into his boat, he must have really been listening. He's like, okay, this guy's in my boat. There's a lot of people here. He has to be in the boat to take a step back from the people so they can all fit to listen. This is something extraordinary. I'm gonna really listen to what this guy has to say. And we don't hear what Jesus is speaking about, But like we know it's great because it's literally Jesus, right? So we're going to go into verse 4 here. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into deep water and let down your nets for a catch." "Master," Simon replied, "we've worked hard all night long and caught nothing, but if you say so, I'll let down the nets." So Simon uses this word master already. This is like, he doesn't say teacher or guy that I respect, guy that I recognized from when you healed my mother-in-law. He's already using the word master. He's like, this guy's cool. This guy's a master. And then he also says, "But if you say so, I'll let down the nets." Because, like, they had worked all night for who knows how many nights and caught nothing. He says, "We worked all night long and caught nothing." Because, didn't know if you guys knew this, nighttime's the best time to catch fish. Look into that if you're really interested in fishing or something. But in this time, when they had night catching with nets, they would go at night and work literally all night. So that's how they got their money. This was their jobs. This was their career. They researched it. They were experts. And then Jesus comes over here and he's like, "Try again." And they're like, "You're a carpenter. We are fishermen." They could have pulled every excuse in the book and said, "We just cleaned our nets. We're super tired. We worked all night. We've caught literally nothing. What makes you think that the daytime is going to get us some fish?" But Simon's like, if you say so, I'll let down the nets. Because he's trusting Jesus. He's like, okay, there's something up. We're going to do it. And I can kind of hear like all the other fishermen being like, okay. But they do it. So we're going to go in verse 6 here. When they did this, they caught a great number of fish, and their nets began to tear, so they signaled to their partners in the other boat to come and help them. They came and filled both boats so full that they began to sink. When Simon Peter saw this, he fell at Jesus' knees and said, "Go away from me, because I am a sinful man, Lord." For he and all those with him were amazed at the catch of fish they had taken. And so were James and John, Zebedee's sons, who were Simon's partners. "Don't be afraid," Jesus told Simon. "From now on, you will be catching people." Then they brought the boats to the land, left everything, and followed him. Like, whoa. You can start to see how trust plays plays a part into this. But, because that's so cool. They trusted him, and they got all that fish. And it's easy to think about the Bible as like just a book, right? Because it's in a book. And I like reading fantasy books and all that, or retellings of like historical event books. Those are cool. But then, like, the historical event books are true. They're still changed a little bit sometimes. Other types of books are just completely fake. But this was real. Like, this actually happened. It sounds like something that couldn't have happened, and that's the point of a miracle. Like, if it was realistic, it wouldn't be a miracle, right? But this actually happened. They filled up 2 boats full of fish after they had caught literally 0, after working for hours and hours, maybe days and days. And then they bring it back to the land, and Simon Peter has this humility, like huge humility. He's like, "Go away from me, because I'm a sinful man, Lord." He knows how cool Jesus is by this point. He's like, okay, I don't deserve to be in your presence. This is amazing. And then Jesus says, "Don't be afraid. From now on, you'll be catching people." And then they brought the boats to the land, left everything, and followed him. But think about this, because their career is fishermen, so they just caught the greatest catch of their life, maybe the greatest catch in history. And Jesus is like, you want to go catch people? They're like, yeah, do not know what that means, but we're going to go. We're going to leave all the fish we just caught and follow him, even though we just made a bunch of money. They didn't sell the fish, they left the fish, and they just followed him. That's their career. They just left their jobs. They trusted him so much. They have seen his character. They've seen how trustworthy he is, and they just left. Like, I don't think I would be able to do that. Especially me being like the kind of control freak that I am. Like, if someone came into Menchie's and told me how to do my job, that was like a customer, I would flip. I'd be like, no, I think I know what I'm doing. But they trusted Jesus, first of all, that they listened to his advice. They let down the nets into the water, caught a bunch of fish, and then they left the fish behind, and they followed Jesus. He says, from now on, you will be catching people. And they followed him. That takes an insane amount of trust that I strive to have. That's so cool. They trusted that God had a plan that was greater than theirs. Because they were set up for a pretty good path, right? They caught all the fish. They were set up for money. And they're like, no, I believe that Jesus has this plan that's going to be better than anything we could come up with. So when I was thinking about this and seeing how relevant trust was and seeing how they had this built trust in Jesus, this quote here is by Ralph Waldo Emerson, and it says, "All I have seen teaches me to trust the Creator for all I have not seen." And that's kind of our big idea for today. Because I feel like this quote is so relevant. It took me a second to wrap my head around it, and I was like, wow. All I have seen teaches me to trust the Creator for all I have not seen. Because we're in high school, we're really young. We haven't seen a lot. There's a lot that we haven't seen. And I do not really, as much as I would think it's convenient and as much as I want to, I don't really want to be the one that I trust with that. I don't want to put trust in myself to figure out the rest of my life. If I was in control, I'd probably end up homeless or something not good. I don't want to be in control there. That's scary. It sounds good in the moment, because then things will go my way and it'll go great. But it's not going to be the plan that God has for me, which is perfect, because God is perfect, right? So when I was thinking about this, okay, do you know those weird shower thoughts that you have? I was having weird shower thoughts when I was thinking about this sermon. I was like, for whatever reason, this came to my head. And I was like, okay, this is actually really relevant. So have you guys heard about how they're making another Titanic the exact same way, and they're going to send it on the same path as the old Titanic? Have you guys heard about that? Okay, I see some nodding heads. Okay, so that's an actual thing that they're doing right now, is they're making a replica of the Titanic that's actually a boat. They're going to put passengers on it, and then they're going to send it the same path as the Titanic took a bunch of years ago. Which, I don't know about you guys, I'm not going to be wasting my money on a ticket on the Titanic for that, because I know the track record that the Titanic has, because right now 10 out of 10 Titanics sink, and I don't want to go on another one, okay? The track record the Titanic has right now is not good. So I was thinking about that, and I was like, I don't have a good track record either. Why do I trust myself so often? A lot of the times when I try to be in control, it does not go well. And then there's this Creator, this all-powerful God that's waiting for me to trust in Him, who has a 100% success rate. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. And even doing this message, it took me, I was like, okay, God, I'm just really going to trust you, because I had this realization when I was driving here. I was like, as long as I trust God, and I come up here and just say how amazing He is, and then read at least one verse, I could be falling, I could be breaking out in tears, I could be hyperventilating up here, and God would still be glorified because I trusted Him and telling you guys about Him. I had to trust in Him with this. I was nervous, but I had to trust in Him with this. I was like, God He has a plan that's greater than mine, and it's going to work out in one way or another, even if I end up hyperventilating on the stage with you guys here. So, I was also thinking about this story that actually happened, because I feel like at one point you got to tell a middle school story if you're telling up here. I don't really know what it is. It's like a thing. So I'm telling you a middle school story of when I was in 7th grade. And my friend Gabby has given me permission to tell the story. She's right there, because she was, I guess, the antagonist in this story. So, when I was in middle school, I had this event that I was going to for Bible quiz team, and this was regional, so it was a 3-day event. And the first night that we're there, they tell everyone to bring a snack. So there were a lot of snacks there, because everyone that's there, if you are in quiz team, I see, okay, ignore this, it's fine. So we all had a bunch of snacks. And I was sitting there, I was just chilling with my little plate of snacks. There's a bunch of choices to choose from, and Gabby comes over. She's like, hey, Betsie, you want a chip? And she says this knowing how low my spice tolerance was. I'll tell you what the chip was in a second. You're probably guessing it right now. My spice tolerance in middle school was absolutely nothing. I used to think ketchup was spicy. It's really bad. I've gotten better at it now. Still, if you go to a Thai food restaurant, I can barely stand a 1 star. My spice tolerance is still not good. But at the time, awful. So Gabby comes over. She's like, do you want to try a chip? And I was like, what chip is it, Gabby? She's like, it's a wasabi chip. And I was like, absolutely not. Are you dumb? And she's like, it's not even that spicy. I ate it. It's like, there's nothing. I want you to prove my theory because it's not spicy. And I'm kind of upset that it's not spicy. It's a wasabi chip, not spicy. I feel ripped off. I was like, so you're wanting me to test if it's spicy? She's like, yeah, it's not even that spicy. And I was like, you know how low my spice tolerance is. Am I going to think it's at all spicy? Because if it is, I don't want it. And Gabby's like, no, it's not spicy at all. Just try a little bit. So I trusted her. I was like, okay, I've known Gabby since 3rd grade. This should be fine. I'm trusting her. She says it's not spicy. I ate the chip. I ran outside to spit out the chip because it was super spicy and I couldn't handle it. I had the smallest corner of the chip and I still couldn't handle it. And they just watered the grass and I sprained, twisted, whatever, my foot, ankle. I'm not really sure what happened. But something happened and I couldn't walk that night while I was simultaneously trying to spit out the spiciness from my mouth. It was not a good time. And now my friends over-dramatize the story and say that I almost died because of a blade of grass, when that's not how it happened. But I trusted Gabby that this chip wasn't spicy because I'd known Gabby since 3rd grade. I was like, okay. I've asked her multiple times and she says it's not spicy. I'm gonna eat the chip. And that's also a fault on my end because I put too much trust in something that had a good chance of going, poo, which it did. Because I feel like we do that. We put trust in things that are seemingly good and innocent. And if we put too much trust in that, if we put all our trust in that, we're just going to end up crashing and burning. Because it's good to put trust in things. If we didn't trust each other, if we didn't trust people, that wouldn't be good. That wouldn't be the body of Christ. It wouldn't be. We have to put trust in each other. But if we put all our trust in something, or if we put too much trust in something, we're just going to end up hurt. Because this world does not have a good track record. That was a super innocent story, so that's just something small, funny, didn't have an impact on my life, but there are gonna be things that if you put too much trust on something and allow it to have too much control of your life, it's gonna alter it, and it's gonna be bad, it's not gonna be good, because only God is perfect. He's the only one deserving of our full trust. He's the only one worthy of this full trust. So when we look at God's character, all we see is faithfulness. If I read you this whole Bible start to finish, there's not a single time where God fails or he proves that he's not faithful. He's 100% faithful and worthy of all our trust, and then we're still over here making excuses for reasons not to trust him because it would be more convenient if we didn't talk to the weird kid at school. It would be more convenient if we didn't tell our friend who's an atheist about Jesus because that's just a lot of work. People are going to think I'm weird if I do that. I don't want to be the weird religious kid. I'm not going to do that. But God's plan is so much greater than that. God's not going to make you the weird religious kid and keep you like that for eternity. Sure, we can always be the weird religious one, but that's not what the whole world's going to see us as. The whole world's going to see us as a light if we're truly living for God. So it's so cool to just think about the aspects of trust and how much we make excuses, and God's still waiting for us to trust him. God's love, he's literally love. He created us, he provides for us, as we see in this story, all that fish. Imagine if Simon just said no. It would have been so much easier for him to just say no. He wouldn't have caught the fish, he wouldn't have gotten to be a disciple of Jesus. That's really cool to think about, that we're missing so many opportunities when we say no to God. So many opportunities, it's crazy. I've had multiple times where I felt God telling me to do something, and I chickened out. I was like, I start thinking worst case scenario stuff. That's Satan trying to distract you because he knows that God has this amazing plan for you. But because of this, so many people lose faith when hardships come their way because they say, yeah, God's perfect. So when God leads you down a path that seemingly is sucky at first, people lose their faith because they're like, this isn't God, because they have this made-up idea in their head that God's always just going to make them happy, right? So I don't want you guys to be like those people that lose faith when you guys leave this high school group, when you stop having D groups every week, when you get to college. When people get to college, it's an alarming amount that stop going to church in general, and they stop learning about God. They stop striving to learn about God, and then something bad happens, and they just lose their faith because they've stopped striving to get to know God. They stopped striving to trust in him. It's so scary, and I don't want those people to be you guys. If you truly trust in God, you're gonna see how he comes through for you every time. He's so faithful. But it's easy for me to just stand up here and tell you to trust God, and you're like, that sounds great. I want to trust in God. So yeah, I'll do it. But when you think about it, you're like, okay, wait, what does that look like? Because it seems like something you just say. You're like, yeah, I'll trust in God more. But then you're kind of stuck at that. What does that look like? And it's going to look different for all of you, but to me, something that might help some of you, trusting in God is giving him control. So spend 5 to 10 minutes just talking to him and telling him about your problems, telling him about your stresses every day. That's something I challenge you guys to do this week. I have a short attention span too, don't worry. It seems like a long time to just be quiet talking to God or talking out loud. Spend 5 to 10 minutes just talking with him. Tell him about stresses. Tell him about things that you are very scared are gonna go wrong. Tell him about the bad grade that you got and how it's messing up your mood for the day. Tell him about boy problems. Tell him about girl problems. Literally do that. It's kind of funny. God wants to hear you talk about that. He's waiting for you to just come and trust in him with all your secrets and problems. It's maybe you have something that you're trying to process on yourself, by yourself. You're like, my family situation's not great. Maybe you're thinking that, and you're like, I feel like I have to fix it. This is very problematic. I don't want to do this. I'm stressed out so much over this. Oh, and yeah, we can't do it. That's the whole point. We have complete reason to be stressed if you're stressed about that, because we can't do it. God's waiting for you to be like, hey, know that my plan's greater. Talk to me about it. So just tell God, hey, you know what's going to happen with my family. It's all in your control. I'm trusting your plan. Just work through me to have your plan happen. Because what we know about God is that he's perfect, and he creates perfect things. His plan for you that he's made since when he made Adam and Eve, since before he made that, just trust in that. It takes so much stress off your shoulders. It's really hard for me to trust in anything but myself sometimes, but when I trust in God and I give it to him, it really clears up my mind and just gives me this peace. It's so cool. So just spend 5 to 10 minutes just talking to God and listening for him. It might be hard for you to listen to God, especially when we're super stressed. It's hard to hear that. Just read the Bible. That's literally God talking to you. Listen for what he has to say. Pray to have him help you hear him. Because sometimes it takes help for us to hear God. Then there's also just aspects of he works through other people, and we choose to ignore it. Have you guys ever been struggling with something and you're just stuck in this sin, and then a friend comes over and hey, how are you doing? You're like, I'm good. God's using this person, they want to talk to you sometimes, or the friend's hey, I just have this feeling that you need help with something. Do you need help with anything? And you're like, no. God's waiting for you to use these. He has multiple ways that he speaks to you. So just look for ways that he's speaking to you. Don't let yourself be convinced that he's ignoring you or that he wants to just leave you there. And if you haven't memorized it yet, this verse, just be meditating on this verse if you haven't memorized. And if you haven't memorized it, I highly encourage you to memorize it. But it's going to be on the screen. So I actually didn't write it down on this one. I have it on my middle school one, so there it is. Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not rely on your own understanding. In all your ways know him, and he will make your path straight. So that's super cool, because if we strive to know him in all our ways, and if we strive to trust in him with all of our heart, this verse really just says it all. Don't rely on yourself. Don't rely on knowing the things of the world. Know God. Trust in him with all your heart. You can trust in other people, you can trust in other things, but if you trust in them with all your heart, it's just destruction. So God should be the only one you trust in all your heart, because he's the only perfect thing, right? But then there could be some of you that haven't actually trusted in God at all, to be your savior. That's a huge, that's going to be the best decision of your life, is trusting in God to be your savior. So I encourage you to talk to one of the leaders about that. They would love to talk to you. Jordan, Cammie, Josh, any of the other leaders in the back, a D group leader. Because maybe some of you guys are just here because your parents make you or because a friend invited you. But really think about what does it look like to trust God, and have you trusted God with your life? So I'm going to come back to this big idea here then. All I have seen teaches me to trust the Creator for all I have not seen. Just think about that as well, and how much we haven't seen. Trust him for those things that you haven't seen. Look at his characters. Analyze how faithful he is. He's the only trustworthy, truly trustworthy thing out there. So now I have some questions for you guys to talk about at your tables or just to think about throughout the day. And they kind of all lead into each other. So the first question we have here is it easy for you to trust people? Because for a lot of you, the answer is no, I have trust issues. But a lot of the answers for you guys might be, I actually trust in people too easily, and I've gotten hurt from that, because we trust in people too easily. So answer that question first. And then that'll lead into the question is, do you find it hard to trust God, and why? Because it is hard to trust God sometimes. We can't see him. We can't, it's not always a clear voice in the back of our head. But the Bible gives us so many reasons to trust in him. So ask yourself, is it hard to trust God? And do you find it hard to trust God? Why is that? These could be personal questions, so you might not always want to share the answer, but they're really thought-provoking, and it might take a second for you to actually think of an answer. And the last question here is, what can you leave behind in order to trust God more? Because right now, if we read the Bible, you see that God's asking you to leave behind things. There's sins in our lives that we've let consume us, we've let develop inside of us. He's asking you to leave that behind to follow him. Maybe you just have to switch directions. You might not be living in sin, but there might be this voice in the back of your head where God's calling you to something and you're ignoring it. You're going to have to leave behind a good thing sometimes too. Like Simon and James and John, they left behind all that fish. They left behind their careers to follow Jesus. Is there something that you need to leave behind, either bad or good sometimes, in order to trust God more? So I'm going to pray for us real quick. Thank you for listening to what I had to say here, and then I'll leave the stage and let you guys talk in small groups here. But yeah, thank you for listening to this series in Luke with me. It's been super fun. I was super excited to do this, so I'm glad that I got to. And we're just going to pray real quick now. Okay. Dear God, thank you for giving me the chance to do this and letting your word just be spoken to these people. You know all the needs of each and every one of these people. You know us all so personally. So please help what I said to be able to just be really helpful for everyone individually, everyone in just different specific ways. Help them just be blessed by your word. Help them to trust in you more, God. Please bless this time in our table groups. Give us focus and concentration to actually answer these questions and trust in you and talk to other people about what it looks like to do that. And in your name I pray, amen.